The summer air was thick with warmth, the golden sun casting long shadows across the neighborhood as children laughed and played in the nearby park. The street buzzed with life, bikes whizzing by, the scent of barbecue wafting from backyards, and sprinklers spinning arcs of water over lush green lawns. But inside one house, there was a heavy silence. 8-year-old Jack sat in the living room, eyes glued to the window, his small body stiff and unmoving. His parents, Emily and David, had been trying for days to get him to go outside. For a boy who once loved climbing trees, playing soccer, and chasing his friends through the park, this sudden refusal to leave the house was baffling and worrying. Emily stood in the doorway, watching her son with concern etched across her face. "He's never acted like this before," she murmured to David, who had just entered the room. David sighed and ran a hand through his hair. "It's probably just a phase. Maybe he had a bad dream or saw something that spooked him." "But it's been days," Emily said, her voice tinged with worry. "Something isn't right. I think we need to talk to him." That evening, they sat down with Jack, his small frame dwarfed by the oversized couch. His eyes, wide and nervous, darted from the window to his parents as they gently asked him why he didn't want to go outside anymore. For a long time, Jack said nothing. His fingers twisted the hem of his shirt, his gaze fixed on the floor. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he whispered, "I saw something out there, by the park." David and Emily exchanged a quick glance, the tension in the room thickening. "What did you see?" Emily asked, her voice soft but insistent. Jack hesitated again before finally answering. "A monster." The word hung in the air like a shadow, filling the room with a sudden chill. Jack wasn't the type to make things up. He had always been a practical, down-to-earth kid. His fear was palpable, and it sent a shiver down Emily's spine. She knelt beside him. "What kind of monster, sweetie?" Jack swallowed hard, his small hands trembling slightly. "It had red eyes. Big, glowing red eyes. And teeth. Long, sharp teeth. It was hiding in the bushes, watching me." The air in the room seemed to still. David's rational mind kicked in, trying to find a logical explanation. A stray dog, maybe? Or an animal he'd misinterpreted in his fear. But there was something about the way Jack described it, so vivid, so certain, that made David pause. "Jack," David said, his voice calm, "are you sure it wasn't just your imagination? Sometimes when we're scared, our minds make us see things that aren't really there." But Jack shook his head vigorously, his eyes wide and unblinking. "It wasn't my imagination, Dad. I saw it. And it saw me." A deep unease settled into Emily's chest. She could feel the sincerity in Jack's words, the fear radiating off him like a cold breeze. "We believe you," she said, glancing at David, who nodded. "But we're going to check it out, okay? We'll go to the park and look for it." Jack's eyes grew even wider, his voice trembling as he whispered, "Don't. What if it gets you too?" Emily smiled reassuringly, though her heart was pounding. "Nothing will get us. We'll just take a quick look and we'll be right back." With that, she and David left Jack sitting nervously on the couch, his eyes following them as they headed out the door. The sun was beginning to set, casting the park in long, eerie shadows as they made their way across the street. What should have been a peaceful, familiar place now felt heavy with an unspoken tension. The park was empty, the swing swaying slightly in the breeze. The bushes where Jack had claimed to see the creature loomed ahead, dark and still. Emily's heart raced as they approached. She tried to remind herself that it was probably nothing, just a stray animal or a trick of the light. But Jack's fear had shaken her. David, always the pragmatist, moved forward first. He crouched down, inspecting the bushes carefully, parting the branches with his hands. "There's nothing here," he called back to Emily. But as he moved one last branch, his breath caught. Wait. Emily hurried over. At the base of the bush was a small patch of disturbed dirt, and beneath it, a loose rock. David carefully lifted it, revealing a dark hole just large enough for a small animal to hide. And then, two glowing red eyes blinked up at them from the darkness. Emily's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a gasp. For a moment, her heart stopped. But as the creature emerged from the hole, the truth became clear. It was a stray cat, its fur black and matted, its eyes glowing red in the fading light. David let out a long breath, a nervous chuckle escaping his lips. "A cat," he said, relief flooding his voice. "It was just a cat." But Emily couldn't shake the cold dread that lingered in her chest. They had found the source of the glowing eyes, but something about Jack's story still unsettled her. The cat didn't explain everything. There was a feeling, deep in her gut, that told her something more was going on. They called animal control to take the stray cat to a shelter, and that night, they explained to Jack what they had found. His reaction, however, was not what they had expected. He listened quietly, nodding as they told him about the cat. But when they reassured him that the monster he had seen was just a harmless animal, Jack's eyes darkened, his expression growing tense. "It wasn't just the cat," he said, softly, his voice barely above a whisper. "The cat was there, but something else was watching. Something bigger." A chill ran down Emily's spine. She glanced at David, who looked equally unsettled. "Jack," she began, but he shook his head, cutting her off. "It's still out there," Jack whispered, his eyes flicking toward the window. "And it knows I saw it." The room fell into a heavy silence, the weight of Jack's words settling over them like a cold fog. Emily wanted to tell him he was wrong, that there was nothing to be afraid of. But she couldn't shake the feeling that Jack's fear was rooted in something real. The days passed, and Jack slowly returned to his normal routine, though a lingering unease clung to him. He began playing outside again, but he never ventured far from the house, always staying within sight of his parents. Emily and David tried to convince themselves that the incident with the cat had been the root of his fear, but deep down, they both knew something more was at play. Then, strange things began to happen. One evening, as Emily was tidying up Jack's room, she noticed something odd. There, on the windowsill, were long, jagged scratches, marks that hadn't been there before. She stared at them for a long moment, her heart pounding in her chest. The scratches looked deliberate, like something, or someone, had been clawing at the window. She didn't mention it to Jack or David, but the discovery left her on edge. Every night after that, she would check Jack's window before going to bed, peering out into the dark yard, half expecting to see something lurking in the shadows. But there was never anything there. Still, Jack's behavior grew more anxious. He would wake in the middle of the night, insisting that something was watching him. At first, Emily brushed it off as nightmares, but then the scratching started. Late one night, as the house lay silent, Emily heard it. A soft, faint scratching, like nails on glass. She sat up in bed, her heart racing. It was coming from Jack's room. Slowly, she crept down the hallway, her breath caught in her throat as the scratching grew louder. She reached Jack's room, her hand trembling as she opened the door. The room was dark, save for the faint glow of the moonlight filtering through the curtains. Jack was sound asleep, undisturbed by the noise. Emily tiptoed to the window, her pulse quickening. Then she saw it. Standing just beyond the fence, barely visible in the shadows, was a tall, dark figure. Its eyes, glowing red, stared unblinking at the house, unmoving, watching. Emily's breath caught in her throat, her body frozen in place. This wasn't a stray cat. This was something else. Something far more sinister. In that moment, Emily knew. Jack had been right all along. The creature was real. Tell us what you think about this story and share it with your friends. It might inspire them and brighten their day. If you enjoyed this story, you might like this one about a rich dad who was ashamed of his waiter's son until one day he surprised him with his dedication to his work.